What's up in War Eagle War Rapport family? It's your guy, Ike Jones. We are back talking a little Auburn basketball. Tahaad Pettiford back. Filip Jovic now with the team. And go talk a little women's basketball. Let's get into it right here inside the town.
The Auburn Express. You are now listening to the War Rapport. LAUbtown Podcast. With your boy Ike Jones.
Welcome inside of LAUbtown, everybody. Ike Jones here, talking Auburn men's basketball first and foremost. In case you have been living under a rock and you are not up to date, Tahaad Pettiford announced his return, eschewing the NBA and foregoing that, coming back to Auburn, a move that I think a lot of people anticipated. There's mixes in the crowd, people who thought maybe he would, because of his stellar performance in day one of the camps out there, decide that he was going to take his talents to the NBA. But alas, on the final day for him to make that decision, decides to return to Auburn. Also on that same day, Auburn gets the forward from Serbia, Filip Jovic. He makes the decision to commit to the Auburn Tigers official. So now Bruce Pearl has his roster solidified for the 25-26 season. So we'll talk about what that roster composition looks like and what that might mean for the Auburn Tigers. And we'll definitely get more in depth into this as the season progresses, or as we get closer to the season and we start to look at how things are playing out with the team during the offseason training and things of that nature. If you're watching this video right now, make sure you go ahead and share the content with somebody. I would definitely appreciate it. But let's talk some basketball here and figure out what we have in this 25-26 version of the Auburn men's basketball team. First and foremost, let's just take a look at the roster. We did a roster look last time I was on here with you. Let's take a look at what the roster is comprised of right now. It is Tahaad Pettiford, the sophomore, now 6'1", 175. He may have put on a little bit of muscle in the offseason. We'll get the updated numbers on what he's looking like. Caden Magwood, the freshman coming in, also 6'1", 165. Simon Walker, true freshman, coming in 6'5", 185. Kevin Overton, the transfer over from Texas Tech, 6'5", 200. Sebastian Williams Adams, the true freshman, coming in at 6'7", 225. Abdul Bashir, the transfer over from JUCO, standing at 6'7", 180 pounds. Keyshawn Hall, the senior transfer from UCF, 6'7", 235. Elijah Freeman, the freshman, 6'8". No weight listed for him or anywhere that I could find, but definitely a solidly built young man. Filip Jovic, the new guy. I haven't listed as a freshman here because he's starting his eligibility, but he is 6'8", 225. Keyshawn Murphy, the transfer senior over from Mississippi State, 6'10", 230. And Emeka Oporum, the sophomore, 7 foot 210 transfer in from JUCO as well. So a solid squad out there for Bruce Pearl to be able to utilize to figure out some things during this offseason. They will have their work cut out because this is going to be a very different looking team from a lot of different aspects for this season. First and foremost, let's talk about Tahaad Pettiford and his return and what that means for this team, right? Tahaad Pettiford is going to be the lead point guard. Now, if you all recall, coming into his freshman season, people were asking about Tahaad Pettiford and where he was going to fit in. And Coach Pearl was adamant that Pettiford was going to be a guy that he wanted to be able to score the basketball. He was going to be a scoring guard and not necessarily a facilitating guard, right? That didn't prove to be the case in this first season, and not because he sold him a dream, but because it worked out that the guy who he wanted to play the point guard just really wasn't getting the job done. So they had to move Tahaad Pettiford over into a more point guard, lead guard type of orientation in the offense. Where I felt like last year that wasn't a good fit for him is that guard spot in the way that they had developed that offense was supposed to be a complement to Janai Broome and this Twin Towers look that they had going on with Broome and Cardwell. And they really wanted to be able to be a team that relied on the front court really heavily rather than their back court. And that's just not the way that Bruce Pearl had typically been allowing his guards to function. And I don't know that that was a great fit for what Tahaad Pettiford could do. Now, he did well in his freshman season in that spot, but it wasn't the best fit for him. I do believe this year, with him coming back and deciding to forego going into the NBA draft, that is going to flip, and you're going to see a lot more of a guard-heavy, guard-centric offense that is centered around making sure that Tahaad Pettiford and his talents are going to flourish. And what are those talents, right? Now, he does function really well as an off-the-ball scorer, as a guy who can just come off the ball, get him off of some pin-down screens and be able to make his decisions off of that curl. That's a really good thing for him to be able to do. But one thing that he actually does fairly well, and a thing that he actually is going to need to work on, especially as he gets into a situation where he wants to move on to the NBA, is how he makes decisions in the pick and roll. And the pick and roll is going to be a heavy function of this team this year. And Tahaad Pettiford is a guy, because he can stretch the floor and you really can't go under on the screen, that he can step up and he can knock it down from 30, right? That is going to be dangerous in the pick and roll. And he is a really good passer when you have that short roll slash. If you're going to have a guy that's going to be playing pick and pop, he does make good decisions. Now, where he struggled in this was when they were blitzing that pick and roll and they were forcing him to try to get over the top of a longer defender, or they tried to hedge and make him go towards the sideline to take away some of what he was doing. You saw that a lot during the Florida game in the Final Four, them trying to force him to the sideline and really use the sideline as a third defender to be able to take away the options that he had. They're going to have to figure out how to make sure, number one, that screen and roll action happens towards the middle of the basketball court and not towards the side. Even if it's the high side screen, right? You want to make sure that it's towards the middle of the floor so he has a two-way option there, and figure out what he needs to do to have better options to pass out of that so that he can function better in that offense. But again, I think the function of that offense last year was to feed Janai Broome mostly. And this year, I think they're going to be a lot more guard heavy. But the question that you have to ask yourself is, behind Tahaad Pettiford, what are you going to have there? Right now, it looks like at the point guard position, you're going to be going to another true freshman for a second year in a row at point guard. I don't know that that's ideal for this team to have another point guard as a true freshman coming in. So you're going to be looking at Caden Magwood and see whether or not he's ready from day one to be a primary ball handler / facilitator. Now, because he is more of a scoring guard and the offense should be made in the mold of Tahaad Pettiford, then you likely have a guy who is more equipped to be able to do that, to come in and fill in behind him in Caden Magwood. So I do like the fact that Caden Magwood has a lot of the same characteristics as Tahaad Pettiford as far as his ability to shoot, 3-level score, can get all the way to the rim, and has some good athleticism. He doesn't have the freaky athleticism of a Tahaad Pettiford, but definitely good athleticism for him there. And the ability to do all of the things. So you have two guards that can really facilitate and function in similar ways. So there shouldn't be a huge drop off if Caden Magwood can live up to some of the hype that I'm giving him right now. And I feel like it's due for some of the things that he's been able to do in his high school career thus far. But you do wonder about what the guard rotation is going to look like, because that was a big thing late in the season for Auburn, particularly when you started to get injuries. You just didn't have the depth at the primary ball handler to be able to absorb any of that, right? So when Denver Jones was hurt and you had Tahaad Pettiford, he had to play 30 plus minutes in games to be able to do that. But then you did at least have Chad Baker-Mazara as another primary ball handler to come in and spell him for some minutes or allow him to come off the ball, things of that nature. Who's going to be the other guy for Auburn basketball coming into this season that's going to be able to be a primary ball handler in case of injury, in case of foul trouble? Who's going to be able to be that other guy? Is Simon Walker, a 6'5" guy, not really as twitchy, going to be able to do that? Are you going to be able to put the ball in Overton's hands as another guard there on that team? I don't know the answer to that one right now. Bashir definitely has the ability to be a guard, but is he a guy who can be Chad Baker-Mazara-ish in a lead guard role and be a facilitator? That's never been something he's been asked to do, right? And so because this offense is going to be a primary pick and roll offense, I believe this year, I think you have a little bit more liberty, a little bit more flexibility with who that person is going to be. As long as that person can be a good decision maker in the pick and roll, then you'll have that ability. But that is a question that I have for this offense is, can they absorb foul trouble? That's another thing that you have for Tahaad Pettiford. From time to time, he was getting in foul trouble, reaching a little bit too much, wasn't moving his feet as well. Are you going to have those same issues with him in year two, as well as the freshman and Caden Magwood? Is he going to be able to come in and be the kind of defensive anchor? You don't have a Denver Jones that's going to be a facilitator / defensive anchor. Who's going to be that guy? You would think Overton is going to be able to function in that role as one of the guards as a defensive anchor, but can you get quality backcourt defensive play and keep those guys out of foul trouble so that your rotation is going to be good? Questions that need to be answered going into this year. What you don't have a question about, well, at least I don't have a question about, is whether or not you've got scores on this team, right? One of the classic failings, I think, of some of the teams that have been comprised under Bruce Pearl that have underachieved in the minds of a lot of fans is they didn't have multiplicity of ways to be able to score, particularly from the perimeter. That's not going to be the case with this year's team. Last year's team had a litany of perimeter scores, right? You had Miles Kelly, who was an absolute sniper from the outside. I don't know that you have a Miles Kelly on this team this year, right? Denver Jones, though he was up and down at points during his career, was an absolute sniper from the outside. So you don't really have a Denver Jones on this team, but you do have guys who can be solid spot up shooters. And I think, again, when you go into a pick and roll style offense, having guys who can pin down in the corner or hunker down in the corner and be able to be available for that skip pass away is going to be important. You get the short roll and then you get the pass away to the corner, and you have a guy like Kevin Overton, Abdul Bashir, who can sit out there and knock down the shots, right? But the big thing that I love about this offense is you have a lot of guys in your front court that you're very comfortable playing that pick and roll action with. I want to focus in on something because he said it himself. Keyshawn Hall and Tahaad Pettiford as a tandem or as a duo going into this season, given absolute fits to defenses potentially, because you have a dynamic scoring guard in Tahaad Pettiford and a dynamic big guard in Keyshawn Hall, who can get out there and he can be a pick and pop, pick and roll, right? He can do all of the things necessary to make that pick and roll very dangerous. His physicality, his ability to go and attack the board. If Pettiford decides to pull up, he can crash and be able to go and be effective on the glass. He can pop out and he can hit the three out off of that. He can pop out, catch the ball, face up, and get to the rim. He's got a lot of qualities that make a very potentially dangerous pick and roll for Auburn, especially if teams are going to play man defense. Right now, if they're going to zone them up, you do wonder how well they're going to be able to pass around the perimeter and who's going to be that mid guy. But the tandem of Tahaad Pettiford and Keyshawn Hall could prove to be a thing that will cause fits for defenses coming up this season. I am looking forward to seeing what they craft around those two as far as the offense is concerned, because I do think those two are going to be the focal points. Those are the two guys who have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to go into the NBA draft, but I decided not to. I'm going to come back for one more year at least to be able to play basketball at Auburn University and improve my draft stock. I think a lot of what's going to happen in this offseason is figuring out what to do with those two young men to improve their draft stock, specifically because they do have NBA aspirations and have gotten NBA draft grades, whether that be first or second round. Both of them have had grades that would say, hey, you could potentially be drafted this year, but they want to be able to raise those grades. Offense is going to be focused on them this year, and that is a dangerous duo. As far as the new guy, Filip Jovic, let's pivot over and talk about him a little bit. Filip Jovic comes over from Serbia, and he is a 6'8" guard or guard forward, really. And he is 225 pounds. Just want to pull up kind of some of what was talked about with him in the press release for Auburn. Is coming straight from the Auburn press team. 6'8", 225-pound forward. Is the first player in the history to hail from Bosnia and Sarajevo. Most recently played in Serbia's top-tier basketball league, and is included a league that included Nikola Jokic, which is, of course, the NBA All-Star / MVP. He's a versatile player. I took a look at some of his tape, and he's a guy, I talked about pick and roll stuff. He's a guy that functions well in pick and roll offenses. He's a good screener, on-ball screener. more of a short roll guy, but very patient around the rim when he catches it, ability to finish in traffic. And he can step out and he can shoot the three a little bit. He can catch it off of, spot ups and be able to shoot the three a little bit as well. So he can stretch the floor for you and be a guy who can be a good contributor in your front court. Now, he doesn't have like the most dynamic post-up game, which, listen, you're coming off of a season where you had Janai Broome, who was the old school, give it to him in the post and let everything function around him. You're not really going to have that guy, even though I do like what Keyshawn Hall brings in his ability to post up. He's still not Janai Broome in that respect. But you do have some guys who can do that. Speaking of a guy who can be a really good screen and roll guy, Hall is, Hall is going to be a good run runner, but you have that a little bit in Murphy as well, right? So both of the Keshans can be good as rim runners and in a post up game, but that's not the primary way that you want to be able to get them involved in the game. Now, lobs over the top and that sort of thing, definitely something that you're going to get from the Keshan guys out there. But Jovic is going to be more of a, you can lob it over the top to him, but he's going to be more of a guy who's going to catch it on the ground and be able to go up with it in traffic type of thing. But again, he can step out and shoot a little bit more so than Murphy, right? Murphy's not going to be a guy who's going to be a pick and pop guy for you consistently. But you do have that in Jovic, the ability to play some pick and pop stuff. So there's some multiplicity of ways that you can attack defenses depending upon who is the screener and make them adjust to a lot of different actions. I do anticipate seeing some very different types of looks out of Auburn basketball this season than you've seen in the Janai Broome era. And Filip Jovic is going to be one of those guys who's going to allow you to be multiple in those ways. The questions, though, big questions that I would have looking at this roster and its composition. I've already talked about the point guard play, but I think two other things concern me more about how this team is comprised. First and foremost, how is Coach Pearl and this staff, how are Coach Pearl and this staff going to be able to build some level of chemistry with a team that is brand new? You have three guys who are true freshmen. You've got another freshman guy who's coming from overseas. And then you got a bunch of transfer portal guys, right? And so this team only has one player returning from last season. So there's no already developed chemistry with anybody on this team. None of these guys have played together at all. How are they going to be able to get together and figure out what makes sense for them on the floor? And they're going to have to spend a lot of time this offseason just playing basketball and figuring each other out. And there's going to be a tremendous task for this staff to figure out what the rotations are going to look like with these guys and really what the defensive identity is going to be. And I think that's going to be the more difficult thing. Getting together on offense and figuring out, okay, well, especially if you're going to be playing a lot of screen and roll stuff and, they're going to run the flex, which is going to be kind of a rinse repeat type of offense. And then variations off of that. I think that they're going to do a stellar job of putting those things together. And those are going to come a bit more innately, whether or not guys are going to get all the shot opportunities that they're used to getting when you're a high volume guy like an Abdul Bashir. Are you going to get the kind of shooting volume that allows you to get into the rhythms that you need to be able to, or can you be more instant offense when you are a guy in Tahaad Pettiford who expects to be a lead guard? How much are you going to be in the facilitation mindset to get other guys involved? Keyshawn Hall is used to being a lead scorer on his team. How much is he going to be able to sacrifice and say, okay, maybe this isn't my time in the game where the ball's going to be coming my direction, or maybe not even my game at all. And I'm going to have to make sure that I'm getting other guys involved, and I'm going to do my part to go out there and just rebound. He did say during this offseason, his central focus is winning. He's shown that he can go out there and score, but he hasn't proven that he can be a winner. This is going to be a season that's going to test his ability to take a back seat at times or step up when necessary and find the times to do that for the sake of being able to win. How are they going to build chemistry during this offseason, and how quickly can they get on a string defensively to be able to rotate well, and who are going to be the guys that are going to step up? And then the second portion of that is going to be rim protection and rebounding. How are these guys going to be on the glass? The glass specifically was an Achilles heel for this Auburn team down the stretch. You don't have a ton of size, but you've got some good size with some guys that, you've got a lot of guys at 6, listen, you only have 2 guys that are below 6'5" on this team, right? You got 6'5" and up, going up to 7 feet on this team. physicality in the paint. How well are they going to be able to dominate on the glass and really force teams to take really good shots, force them into bad shots, but make sure that ends the possession there on one end. And on the opposite end, are they going to be able to get to the offensive glass a little bit? Because you're going to probably be a very three-point heavy team. You're going to be shooting a lot of threes with this team this season. I feel a proliferation of the outside shot coming for Auburn men's basketball this season when you've got so many guys with the ability to shoot it. How well are you going to be able to rebound out of that? Is going to be a question for this team coming up this season. Predictability in that is going to be a big portion of how you can get better at the offensive glass, but the physicality is going to be another portion of this. How well are they going to be able to do that? I didn't even mention Elijah Freeman in all of this, and I don't want to overlook him. So many guys that you can get into, and I definitely want to take time to talk about each of those individually. So stay tuned for that for sure. And I'm expecting some good things for this Auburn men's basketball team this season because it's going to be an exciting team. Up and down the floor, high-paced type of squad this year for Auburn men's basketball. Speaking of up and down the floor, high-paced, you can't talk about that without talking about Auburn women's basketball. So let's pivot over here and talk about that. While we're here, make sure that you are going ahead and sharing this video with somebody. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But let's get over here and talk some Auburn women's basketball. Auburn women's basketball is coming up on their inaugural season of Larry Vickers. He has also rounded out his roster like the men's basketball team, and it has come a long way in a very short amount of time for Coach Larry Vickers. Let's take a look at what that team is comprised of. And what you see here is freshman Sanaya Richardson, the guard there at 5'5". Maya Pettiford, the 5'9" guard, transfer over. I believe it's Rutgers that she transferred over from. Ariel Jackson, the transfer in at 5'9" guard. Caitlin Duhan making her return to the Plains this season, 5'10" guard forward. Harrison Koulibaly, who is 5'10", playing at a guard forward position. Jemiah Harris, the junior, transfer over at 5'11", they're playing at the guard. Sasha Joseph, she was the only holdover from the old class that was put together by Coach Harris. She decided she was going to stick with her commitment with Auburn. She is coming in at 5'11" and a guard forward. Soraya Daniels stayed with the team after the departure of the head coach, the sophomore there at 6 foot. Katie Lee, sophomore, 6'2" forward, was added over from the transfer portal as well. Clara Koulibaly, no relation to Harrison. They're spelled differently. The junior 6'3" forward coming over from junior college. Quinira Montague, the junior 6'5", transfer over from Mississippi State. And then Ike Jones, the transfer over from UCF, 6'9" center there for the Lady Tigers. This team, one of the things I talked about when I was looking at the roster before was, they seemed like they were a little small. And were they going to be able to compete on the interior? The addition of Katie Lee, Sasha Joseph now added to that, Koulibaly and Montague makes for a formidable front court that has a lot of versatility and ability to get up and down the floor. I talked about this before with Arik Angui, who has the size, but just doesn't have really a ton of experience. She's somebody who is probably going to be a little bit more of a developmental piece, but definitely can come in as a rim protector at 6'9". But I definitely like the composition of this roster a lot more right now. You've got enough guards to be able to play multiple people at your lead guard position. You, of course, have Sanaya Richardson, who is going to be a dynamic point guard for this team. And then you have got other young ladies who have played at the point guard position or have been a guard that's bringing the ball up the floor. Now, Ariel Jackson has been a point guard in her time, and she can continue to do that for this team going into this season. And then even though she's at a forward position or a bigger guard, Jemiah Harris has been someone who's brought the ball up. Now, I wouldn't want her to play primary point guard for Auburn, but she has done that duty at her team. Maya Pettiford is somebody who can bring the ball up the floor. And that was a big thing that was an issue for this Auburn women's basketball team last year. They just didn't have enough people that you trusted to bring the ball up the court, especially when teams were pressing. You didn't have effective ways to break that press because you didn't have enough really quality ball handlers. This team's got 1, 2, 3, 4. I would put Harrison Koulibaly in that, Jemiah Harris, 5 really ladies who I would say are qualified or capable of being someone who can bring the ball up the floor, and multiple people who, when you're trying to break the press, you can put them in situations where they've got enough height as a ball handler to be in the middle of that press and turn if nobody's there, and get the ball across half court, or even advance in a 3-2 break type of situation that's created out of breaking that press. I like what the composition is there. And then I like the addition of some additional size there with Lee, the other Coulibaly, Montague, giving you some more front court players that can go in there and be effective on the glass and be rim protecting types. Montague, who is coming back from injury, played there at Mississippi State, is someone who you absolutely want to be able to be a dominant force in the front court, and fits a lot into the mold of what you would like to see from a Larry Vickers front court player, somebody who can play with their back to the basket as a post-up player, but also can step out and shoot the ball from distance, whether that is a long two, medium range type of thing, or actually step out and shoot the three a little bit. Montague's got a lot of that in her ability and can put the ball on the floor away from the basket. So Larry Vickers, in the way that he likes for his bigs to play, she fits really well into that mold. Again, coming off of injury, so looking to see how much her quickness and agility is going to be impacted by that. But she is fitting the mold perfectly for him. And then again, you've got some other young ladies that will do a really good job for this team to be able to play on the interior. Harris, though she's a little bit shorter, coming in at 5'11", has some toughness to her to be able to get there on the inside and play a little bit down low, particularly trying to be able to function on the glass for this team. I love what you added in a 6'2" Katie Lee there, and her ability to play big in this lineup for Auburn. So I like kind of the fact that, if you look at the composition of last year's team and the number of players that were over 6'2" last year, you really didn't have a lot that you felt really confident in. I feel good about 6'2", 6'3", 6'5" there with Lee, Coulibaly, and Montague as a really good rotational front court. And then you have some good guard forwards in there, folks that can play some bigger guard type of scenarios in there with Sasha Joseph, the 6-footer there, who can come in and play some of that big guard / forward role for you. Soraya Daniels is going to be a crucial portion, I think, defensively for what Larry Vickers wants to do. And that's one of the things that I really want to focus on for this team is, I talked about the cohesion and the chemistry that needed to happen with Auburn men's basketball. Women's basketball is going to have to figure out how to play Larry Vickers style defense. I think he's got some good pieces to be able to do that. How quickly are they going to be able to come together and be the harassing zone-oriented defense that he wants to be able to play? I love the Katie Duhan and Soraya Daniels staying on the team as players who have been in that system that Coach Harris had that was ferocious defensively, and you have some tough defensive-minded guard forwards that are going to be coming and being, I think, crucial parts of, number one, building a culture. I talked about with men's basketball, you didn't have anybody returning from a championship squad there the previous year. I think you retained some really good pieces from a non-championship team that have the toughness and the mentality to be able to come in and ready to play immediately in the SEC, and have done that for years in the case of Duhan. And coming off of her first season there with Daniels, they're ready to play immediately in the toughness of the SEC, and they fit really well into the tough mindset defensively that Coach Vickers is going to want to employ for this team. So love a lot of that. The question that you're going to have with this team is, can they get over the hump, right? In year one, what is success going to look like for Coach Larry Vickers, right? You had a team last year that came in with a lot of hype driven from folks at this channel. Myself, Mike G, really high on that team, thought that they had the offensive pieces to be able to cure some of the ails that were happening the previous seasons under Coach J. And they could go out there and they could shoot a lot more. And then injuries decimated the team. And a lot of the people who you expected to be contributors from outside scoring perspective just weren't available consistently enough. The rotations were all over the place. Tons of turnovers from the backcourt there. Is the freshman, Sanaya Richardson, is she ready to be a guard in this league and be able to run a team effectively? Is she going to be able to step out there and not be, up and down from a turnover perspective? What you loved about the team last year in the point guard position with Marshawn Bostic was her quickness and her ability to be a facilitator. She could be someone who could have, a double digit or number of assists in a game, right? She could have a double and one of those doubles be assists in the game, right? But she was also capable fully of having double-digit turnovers. I don't think she had any games where she had double-digit turnovers, but 6-7 turnovers was not something that you would not see from Marshawn Bostic last year. Is Saniyya Richardson, at a true freshman, able to come in and mitigate some of that? Maybe she's not going to be as quick. I mean, Marshawn Bostic, speed-wise, was one of the best in the country at being able to blow by and really get downhill and put pressure on defenses to be able to stay in front of her and then facilitate when she got there inside of the lane. But sometimes would be out of control, throwing passes, not really having an idea where she wanted to go or getting charges, that sort of thing. Is Saniyya Richardson going to be a guard who can control the pace a little bit more? She's a much better shooter just from the beginning, right? So she does stretch the defense in a way Marshawn Bostic could not. But can she be a lead guard and facilitator in this offense and be able to really be the type of guard that controls the game? Because Larry Vickers point guards, the reason why those teams the last few seasons for Larry Vickers were so good is because they had dynamic point guard play that was out there really controlling the pace of the game, able to step up and knock down shots when they were available to them, and making good decisions for that team consistently. Can Saniyya Richardson be that type of guard? Ariel Jackson going to be another guard that's going to be in there in the rotation there for point guard. Not so much the shooter, but definitely has more experience. Can she be kind of the veteran presence to be out there and give this Auburn women's basketball team the ability to play at a good pace? If Richardson's not ready from day one, can Ariel Jackson be the one that's starting the game, and then Richardson provides you more of a scoring punch off of the bench? That's yet to be seen. Maya Pettiford, somebody who, from a size perspective, you definitely could have go out there and play guard, but she's more of a scorer, right? She's not going to be the facilitator that you need out of that squad, but she can absolutely shoot the three and can do it at a blazing pace sometimes. So you have more ability to shoot now with Saniyya Richardson. I just named Maya Pettiford, who I've already said. Katie Duhan was developing the ability to shoot the outside shot. May not be a knockdown three-point shooter, but definitely can shoot from mid-range and beyond and be able to stretch the defense a little bit. Jemiah Harris, not really a three-point shooter, but she can step out and shoot a little bit. And then I already talked about Montague's ability to stretch that from the center / forward position. And then can Sasha Joseph be able to come in and be a little bit more of a stretch the floor kind of player? I think she has that ability in her game as well. And Soraya Daniels was developing into being able to be a kind of a corner three threat a little bit last season. Can she be a little bit more consistent with her ability to catch and shoot that, or putting the ball on the floor and getting to the rim with a better idea of where she wants to go? But again, the floor to ceiling conversation for this team, I think, is a little difficult to have right now without really seeing how they progress in this system defensively, because that's going to be the key thing for this team. Because they do have some scoring pieces, it's not going to be as big an issue this year for this Auburn basketball team to score the basketball, because I think they have some more natural scores, some more naturally gifted scores, particularly at the guard position this season. But can they be the type of defensive team that, even if the offense isn't gelling immediately, that they can create turnovers and really get out in transition and finish in transition? That's one of the things I actually love about this team from the bigs that are there from the front court. You have a lot of young ladies who can really run the floor and be able to get out in transition and finish in transition. I loved when I watched Harrison Koulibaly's tape of seeing her really run the floor effectively and finishing strong in the lane in transition, whether there were players and bodies around or not. She was patient and able to finish in the lane. That's going to be a big thing for this team, because, again, that was an Achilles heel for some of those teams under Coach Jay was, yeah, we can get the steal, we can get out, but we weren't really finishing well in transition, and we did not have the ability to punish those teams after we would get those turnovers. So looking forward to seeing what happens with the women's basketball team as well. That's all I got for you guys right now. I definitely will have more, and I'm going to be doing more film on all of these men and women as we get closer to the season. So make sure you keep it locked right here with you guys here at the Rapport in LAUbtown. Before you get out of here, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the content with somebody. Be back at you with more great Auburn sports content. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.